Well, folks, we have got just a giant amount of stuff to go through today. Thank you so much for joining in again to Day-to-Day News at Stockwell Day and giving you the behind the scenes on some of the major stories of the day at home and abroad, things you won't see in mainstream media. I really want to look at today, the stories are following a theme. I'd call it a theme of, are we really maybe just hitting now the realization that gigantic governments and gigantic administrations are not really the most efficient way to go, do not deliver the best services in the most efficient way to people. So jumping right in, of course, all in the news is the presentation from President Trump at the UN. And there's been tons of commentary on that. One of the most important things to consider right here is the fact that he's just challenging in some ways the gigantic size of the United Nations and then looking at what's achieved through it. What is the result of trillions of dollars being spent, nations like the US, Canada, and Europe paying billions and billions of dollars in, and what is really being accomplished? Those are the questions that I think it's worthwhile to take a serious look at. And he's using, of course, as a number of examples, he's using the conflicts around the world to say, what really has the UN done? What has the United Nations done? And making the case that other bodies that may not be as gigantic and all-consuming, bodies like NATO, or at times we can talk about the EU itself, the Organization of American States. Smaller groupings, regional groupings can be more effective. So he's really putting into some legitimate questions here about the huge size, and also that key decisions are made by communist countries, made by countries with horrendous human rights records, and asking that this all be taken a look at. And I guess we have to ask, can people get beyond whatever they feel about President Trump? Can they get past that and ask these legitimate questions? So that's, you can't get much bigger in terms of the size of an organization than in questioning really how effective is it. With that, we see at the United Nations, right following that, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, making his presentation and his plea, and many of the countries walking out. I'm not going to spend hours here, though we could, looking at the whole Israel question, but it would be helpful to have United Nations or other groups that are lining up against Israel just address a couple of questions that are on people's minds around the world. They talk about the need for dealing with genocide, and of course we all agree with that. And yet it is Israel and their armed forces, and any history analysis, modern or not so modern, will bear witness to this, that when Israel goes into Gaza, they significantly target Hamas militants. There's never been a military force go into an area and warn the people in the area to please get out of the way so that the bad guys can be dealt with. There is clearly not a genocide, though innocent people in any war on both sides are tragically casualties, and that is one of the horrors of war. But a genocide, this is not. If there's any genocide, that would go on the Hamas side, because they declare in their charter that what they want to do is kill all Jews everywhere all the time, and they want to evaporate Israel. That's what you call genocide. You saw that working out in practical terms on the awful October 7th massacres, where women, children, babies were killed, tortured, raped en masse. That's called genocide. Israel doesn't do that. Hamas does. And countries like Canada and others are saying that we should recognize this Palestinian state, though it has no borders, though its declared leaders of that state, supported by the vast majority of the population, close to 90% of Palestinians in polls show that they support the Hamas position, which is to kill all Jews all the time, everywhere, and eliminate Israel. And to see this go to an election would produce the same result. So at least let's consider those questions on these accusations And on the question of apartheid, again, if people want to see this in more detail, they can go to the documentary that I did. Go to stockwellday.com. You'll find my documentary there on October 7th, pointing out that Israel is the country, the only one in that whole sea of Arabic nations, the only country that has a true democracy, where Muslims vote, where Muslims can be elected, where a Muslim can serve on the Supreme Court. Israel has freedom of religion, respect for women, equality for women, respect and human rights and equality for gay rights, all of those things which are not found in any of the nations around Israel, and certainly not found in Hamas, who takes a pretty dim view of those groups which I just mentioned. So let's talk about it, let's have the debate, but really let's get answers from those who are concerned and are upset about what Israel is doing. Let's get answers from them. What do you say about Hamas and the vast majority of the Palestinians say, kill Jews all the time, everywhere, and eliminate Israel? On the area of big government, let's just jump over for a minute to California. We've just seen in the last 24 hours, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, with an amazing announcement. There are energy companies, oil and gas companies, which are announcing they are leaving California because the regulatory costs, the taxation costs are suffocating, and they're not able to deliver quality, clean, refined products the way they would like to. And there are, according to Gavin Newsom, some 2,000 wells that need to be drilled and dug so that the appropriate natural gas and other refined products can provide to California the energy that is needed. As beautiful and as sunny a state as California is, there's not enough solar and there's not enough wind to power that entire country. So let's ask the question, why are these companies wanting to leave? And they've said that. And here we have Governor Newsom. He's coming up with legislation to stop them from leaving. In other words, to keep on drilling and continue with energy supply. These are the type of questions that need to be asked, along with the fact that California, which waves the green flag all the time in terms of being affected by these unscientific studies about the end of the world coming due to emissions, yet they bring in, wait for it, yes, Saudi oil, Saudi and energy from Saudi Arabia, but they won't allow their own companies to do it. So we see a migration out of California of its citizens. Compare that to what's going on in Canada, a similar situation where people are moving into the province of Alberta, which runs a system that is much more citizen-oriented, that does not believe in the overarching stifling effects of big government, that has lower taxes, a more efficient regulatory system, and people, when they're allowed to, make up their minds. Let democracy stay that way. Let people move with either their wallets or their futures, and you'll see them continue to go to the areas which have lower and more efficient taxes, lower and more efficient regulation, and people are allowed to have some of the freedoms that they indeed would expect to be had by any group, any population. In that particular province, in British Columbia, the biggest city is Vancouver. So we're seeing another shot at big government here. The leader of the opposition party in British Columbia, John Rustad, head of the British Columbia Conservatives, he made an announcement yesterday at there's an annual meeting of all the municipalities, and he's going to shut down, he's going to severely reconfigure something called Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver is an organization that's about 100 years old, and it's a grouping of 21 municipalities, huge bureaucracy. It was originally intended 100 years ago to look at basic services like water and sanitation. It has mushroomed far beyond that with $3.2 billion, and he's come out and said he's going to scrap it. There'll still be obviously coordination for basic services, but this is it's got people just amazed and people saying, well, we never thought of that. Why not? So another sign that maybe people are starting to say is huge government is suffocating, gigantic government the way to go, maybe not. With that, you've seen making international news, and it's interesting, it's again coming to the province of British Columbia, the story of the ostrich farm That farm has been in existence for many, many years with a family running it. 400 beautiful birds several months ago. Some of the birds died. They were diagnosed with and seen to have avian flu, and then it stopped going through the herd of this flock, if you want to call it, these giant ostriches. They're all healthy, but the federal government is intent on slaughtering almost 400 of the ostriches. Yesterday, they finally got a stay at the Supreme Court level in Canada to make their case, and people everywhere, citizens, are just asking a question. The federal government is making it illegal. They've said, the owners of the birds, it is illegal to test the birds to prove if indeed they have developed herd immunity after a number of them died. This program and these ostriches have been tested for a long time to prove that herd immunity can develop. And people, the conspiratorial approach to this is people are saying, is big government, big pharma, and these big health agencies, are they desperately wanting not to have truth come out about the fact of how large groups can in fact develop immunity, maybe without massive vaccination programs? So the cry of the people and of the ostriches, if you could hear them, is just test them, test the birds, and see if they are healthy as they claim to be. We even had a situation where many of the national police, the federal police, the RCMP swarmed in on the area, put up barricades, arrested the family at times. You got pictures of officers in hazmat suits climbing poles and taking down security cameras. It is one of the worst examples, atrocious, of large government gone amok. The federal Liberals are paralyzed. The Prime Minister doesn't know what to do. It looks like this bird brain attempt to crush the birds might wind up with in favor of the birds. We'll see how that develops. Now, it's not just governments, but there's other large groupings of people that get into different forms of groupthink. So there's about 5,000 Hollywood actors. I didn't know there were that many. They named some of the top ones at the head of this list. I didn't recognize the names. That's my fault, not anybody else's. But 5,000 who are opposing any artist, anybody artist, producer, creator that has anything to do with Israel. It's ridiculous for all the arguments that I've just said related to the United Nations. And they're saying just shut down Israel. These artists should know that many of them, with the interests and groups that they want to protect, would actually be killed in many of the Hamas-related territories, but don't worry about that. That's not something we should be talking about. So this petition of sorts has gone out asking artists and creators around the world, have nothing to do with Israel. In other words, cancel culture at its maximum coming through Hollywood. But again, is this a sign that big government and overarching groups may not be the most powerful way to go? Because a corresponding group of about 1,200 artists, actors, producers are saying this boycott is wrong. It's going to stifle artistic merit. It's going to stifle artistic production and ability. Stop this now. So now we've got what used to be a monolithic group. The Hollywood United Artists are now splitting. And what that's going to make for, I hope, is the ability to have a discussion on both sides of this issue. We see another huge development in terms of big organizations breaking down. TikTok, it looks like it's now been successfully negotiated that the giant nation of China will no longer be having total control over the algorithm process. Major U.S. companies are now going to have a big part of investing in TikTok. ByteDance, the Chinese group, is going to be reduced to about 20% ownership. That will mean that the Chinese government communist algorithms that have been going out through TikTok are going to be drastically reduced, if not eliminated. So again, another giant organization being broken down into manageable pieces. On the technology side, because sometimes AI gets a bad rap, and AI is like fire and the discovery of fire. Fire and does a lot of good, creates a lot of positive products, and of course has to be controlled. But using AI, Target stores have now developed a system for the blind, where the blind can go through the self-check procedures, don't have to wait in the long lineups where there are other people. Amazing to think of what technology is doing all around us. On the culture side, we've already talked about Hollywood. I want to close out with this story today. It's been noted by many people right across the philosophical board that one of the most stunning things people have seen maybe in their lifetime on live television is Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, looking into that camera with tears in her eyes and actually saying what many of us would find unbelievable to say, that she forgives the killer of her husband, Charlie Kirk. That just brought people to a stop everywhere because, in our own hearts, and I know I deal with this, I've got some spots there where I struggle with forgiving people who I feel may have hurt me in some way. And there's people out there who struggle with me, that I've said or done things, which I certainly have, that could cause other people angst. And here we have an announcement today from Tim Allen. Those of you in my age group and slightly younger will remember him as the Tool Man, Home Improvement, and other stores. And he published something today which has really grabbed everybody's attention. He said that he was watching Erica Kirk, and as he was doing that, he was reflecting on the fact that his father, who was murdered about 60 years ago, he has never been able to forgive the person who murdered his father. He had to grow up as a young boy without a father, and after seeing what Erica Kirk did, he has forgiven. He's been holding that for 60 years, and he has forgiven the murderer of his father. Amazing things happening, folks. Some good, some challenging. Glad you're with us today. Stay tuned as we look at more on our next broadcast. Thank you very much.